one time, go grab your guns. I'll tell you one time, this ain't philosophy. Wow!
During these last months, the king walked with death, as if death were a companion, an acquaintance whom he recognized and did not fear. In the end, death came as a friend. And after a happy day of sunshine and sport, and after good night to those who loved him best, he fell asleep. As every man or woman who strives to fear God and nothing else in the world may hope to do. I, whose youth was passed in the august, unchallenged, and tranquil glories of the Victorian era, may well feel a thrill in invoking once more the prayer and the anthem. God save the Queen.
Good evening, and welcome to the War Room. The speech you've just heard was the first of what would be 15 prime ministers who have served and sought counsel from, at his time, the newly ascended Queen Elizabeth II. I thought I would start today's show a little different. It's definitely quieter around here. I'm having a hard time dealing with the news of the last 48 hours, strangely enough. And I don't really know why. I do and I don't. From a psychology standpoint, I get it. Anyway, the first segment I have for you, I'm running solo, and it's A World in Mourning. King Charles III arrived in London this morning, for me, and would have to deliver the most important speech of his life to a nation and a global commonwealth in mourning. A nervous world eagerly awaits to hear how the new monarch will rule differently from his mother, the longest reigning monarch in British history. He arrived at Buckingham Palace today at 2:13 p.m. UK time, and his first act as king was to walk among the people that gathered around Buckingham Palace, and he spoke to them, and he shook their hands individually, much to the shock of his security detail. Something that's never been done before. The speech that followed was of a message in a tone that the nation and the world as a whole needed to hear. It was a message that definitely quelled any concerns of how the future of the UK would look going forward. When His Majesty renewed his mother's commitment of a lifetime of service to the people, much like his mother did at age 25. You can catch the King's speech in the previously released Pwnery's Breaking News segment that went live a little over an hour before we went on air tonight here. Why does this bother me so much? In psychology, we have a theory known as object permanence. And what object permanence describes is a thing that is the universe to you. Something that has always been there. You were born into it. You knew nothing of the world without it. The first lesson that most people learn tragically about object permanence is usually in the form of the death of a pet. But that one's a little easier to cope with because a lot of times the pet came after you and left before you. Whereas the real lesson, the real first lesson, is usually the death of a parent. And for me, the death of Queen Elizabeth is my first real sense of object permanence and loss. Because she was there my entire lifetime. I was born into it. She had already ruled for well over 26 years before I came along. She was there the entire length of my lifetime. Strangely enough, she was there the entire length of my mother's lifetime. My mother was born in 1951. Queen Elizabeth was coronated in 1953, 16 months after the death of her father, King Albert. Or King George VI, rather. He took the name of his father. Strangely enough, she had been a force in my dad's entire lifetime. Because King Albert ascended the throne in 1936, I believe. So my dad was born a year before that. And most children don't pay attention to the world around them. Not until they're double digits of age, right? And in his era, there was no TV. So it was print. So he even got less information. So for somebody like this to have been around that long, for my dad, who's 87 years old, to lose a monarch that ruled for 70 years of his life, it's a real strange feeling. And I watched everything today and yesterday, and it felt really bad just watching it. And I know it's strange because I'm not British. I have Scottish ancestry, yes, half my lineage. But for some reason, I felt a great sense of loss. And I still do. And it's hard for me to even talk about it. So I'm glad you afforded me the time of your busy day and to let me go on this little diatribe. But I promise it'll be a little more cheerful because I found something rather interesting. And before I get into it, I'm going to bring my co-host. Meet Scottish Naya. Scott P79, good evening to you, sir.
Yeah.
I don't know if you listened on the YouTube side. I did most of my diatribe, but I saved the old wives' tale part so you could be here to hear it, so we could have a little fun with it. There's an old wives' tale about people who pass on from this world. And when they die, it's sort of like being a high school graduate. It's the graduating class of, and then the number is the year you were, the age you were when you died. So, essentially the way that the wives' tale goes is those who pass on from this world are met with all of those who passed throughout history at the same age you died. So it's not the year you died. That's an interesting list all of its own this year. Because she would have been met by Sean Connery, right? And Mikhail Gorbachev. I mean, wow. And I think I told Scott this earlier today. I have these ideas, but I never have the ability to make them visually real. But I wanted to draw a picture of a caricature of my avatar, Connery's Bond, basically reaching out saying, "This way, Your Majesty," in front of like the pearly gates. That would be the coolest mural. But I lack that artistic ability. But that instantly was in my head. And I thought, man, could you imagine if like a London street artist graffitied that on the wall next to Buckingham Palace? Do you think anybody would dare mess with it? No, of course not. That guy might even be Time Magazine's Man of the Year for all we know. Anyway, I thought what we would do is start off the show today with just a little bit of fun, because the rest of this episode is, well, doom and gloom and nuclear fallout in World War III. Yes, the scroller has been updated. If you watched last week and you watched this week, you'll notice that the numbers have grown substantially in terms of infantry lost, armored vehicles, tanks, UAVs, multiple launch rocket systems. Ukraine has been very busy despite the very little media coverage we've had, and especially the complete lack of media coverage because of what has dominated the news in the last 48 hours. Rightfully so. It's a big deal. So I thought what we would do is have a little bit of fun, and we would take a quick look at those who would be in Queen Elizabeth's graduating class of 96 years old. And it's actually quite an eclectic and interesting list. First of all, Katharine Hepburn. Actress, famous golden era of Hollywood actress, one would argue. Simo Haya, also known as the White Death. Finnish sniper, credited with over 500 kills in World War II. Cicely Dyson, actress, singer, personality. General Jimmy Doolittle, obviously of the Doolittle Raid fame. Alice Roosevelt Longworth, socialite, writer, personality of her own era, and daughter of Teddy Roosevelt. Harry Morgan, who I didn't know this until today, was actually born in the same hospital my dad was. Of course, he came 20 years before my dad. You would probably recognize him as Colonel Sherman Potter, MASH. Fitness guru, actor, personality on TV. Fitness guru. Jack LaLanne. Fay Wray, actress, original woman taking up the tower in the very first King Kong movie. Was it comedian? Television personality? TV host? Game show host? Monty Hall. Pretty interesting. Robert Earl Jones. Some of you may know who that is. He was an actor, he was a boxer, he was an athlete, he was one of the founding members of the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s. Or maybe you just know him as the father of Darth Vader, James Earl Jones. Hosni Mubarak. For those of you who are students of history who may have witnessed, and everybody lived through, what was known as the Arab Spring across North Africa in the early 2000s. He was the deposed leader of Egypt. Actually, he's the guy who took over, but then became deposed afterwards. And Henry Heimlich, founder of the Heimlich maneuver. Now, the list I had of those names had 296 names, but I just wanted to give you some of the more notable ones. So if the wives' tale is true, one could argue that Katharine Hepburn is an incredible company for people of her own age group. Half the people she probably met or shook hands with, to be perfectly honest, because a lot of them were from her era. Anyway. Go on.
Yeah, she probably did.
Well, I know she probably heard of or at least spoke to a Jimmy Doolittle. Or maybe Harry Morgan, maybe Simo Haya, maybe
Probably Audrey Hepburn.
Katharine Hepburn.
Katharine Hepburn,
Yeah. So before I go on to the next segment, let me say good evening to all of you in the chat. Mad Sexy, Shady Hill, Gunpowder Beauty. Good evening to all of you. Let me catch up on the chat. Sorry, OBS had an update, and its quality of life update is incredible. It works so much better, but it changed the visual representation of my layout, so I'm having a much harder time reading the chat. So I have to actually load the page. Let's see. Death always comes, death always wins, no point in fighting it. You know what's really funny? That's part of the quote that Winston Churchill did say upon the death of King Albert. Or, sorry, King George VI. The man's name was Albert. And for those of you who never saw the movie, I would highly encourage you to see The King's Speech with Colin Firth, who did play Albert, who became King George VI. Because it does give you a little glimpse into the life of not only him, but a very young Elizabeth, too. They cover that. And Helena Bonham Carter plays the Queen Mum, and she does a fantastic job. And the story of one Lionel Logue will blow your mind. From a psychology and sociology standpoint, that man was a juggernaut. Because he wasn't even supposed to be there, let alone be among royalty. He was beyond commoner. He was an Australian.
Even worse than a commoner.
Well, he served in World War I. Many of his friends had died. He was a bit of a linguist, and he was helping those who suffered from PTSD and shell shock to help them regain their ability to communicate with people. Which is why, even though he wasn't a licensed doctor, he was highly respected by those he actually helped, including Albert himself, who was basically his best friend until Albert died. It's an amazing story. If you've never seen it, you really need to see it. It's awesome. I'm a bit of a movie buff, and it's not usually my type of movie, but man, was it good.
Well, it also depends on who the actors were. And the actors were phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, Mad Sexy was talking about Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell actually did hang out at, I don't think it was Balmoral. They vacationed or something at one of Elizabeth's vacation homes. That is true. And there is controversy, but in the grand scheme of her life, there's a documentary called The Fighting Queen or something like that, and it talks about her early life, how she was dedicated to service of the people before she even said it. She joined the military auxiliary group. She was a mechanic. She was an ambulance driver, things like that. She always worked with people. Strangely enough, someone else also pointed out, because I made them go watch that documentary, that a young Elizabeth looked a lot like my ex-girlfriend. Sounded like her too. And I thought, that's an image I won't be able to shake for a while. Thanks. But anyway, in the grand scheme of things, and as monarchs typically are, she was very different. You know, she was like, she dedicated her life to service. That she said that at age 25. She was homeschooled. She was highly educated for somebody who didn't gain formal education, to be perfectly honest. There's a very good story about, in 2013, she had called in all the top executives and financiers of her country during the financial crisis, and she basically posed a question to them in her non-public appearance form. See, what you see on TV is very different from the woman you see in public or in private. And one of the flies in the room basically said, well, she had them all in the room, and she sat them down, and she goes, let me just put it to you bluntly. How did none of you see this coming? And they all stood there and sort of bumbled around and made excuses of how they couldn't see it coming. And she said, "So what you're basically saying is you're all idiots, more or less." That's the kind of woman she was. I watched an interview with her private chef of 16 years yesterday give an interview talking about how for a royal of England, she was very Italian. And like the interviewer was like, "Could you elaborate on that?" And he says, "Oh, by all means." She was very animated. She spoke very quickly, and boy, did she use her hands a lot when she spoke, which you never saw in public. Her public figure, she's always kind of stoic and reserved. Apparently, that's not who she was in private. There's also another joke saying that the reason she died was because they took away her alcohol. They wouldn't
That's
let her.
a possibility.
They wouldn't let her drink anymore, which is really sad because Johnny Walker, during her Diamond Jubilee, released a very special limited edition called Diamond Jubilee, and De Beers cut the decanters that looked like giant diamonds, and each bottle sold for over $300,000. They gave the royal family 2 of them. They would sip on it at Christmas. She got to have that back then. I know of a person who owns one of those bottles, and his first name is Shake. Anyway, very cool lady, very amazing life lived. I would have loved to have met her, but I never did. So I have to wait until I'm 96 before I pass, and then maybe I get to meet her then, if the wives' tale is true. And if you're an existentialist, which I'm not. I'm an atheist. Oh well. So today was day 2 of what they call Operation London Bridge. It was a long-standing plan for the UK to make final arrangements for the passing of a monarch. Obviously, the last time this happened was over 71 years ago. So everyone's kind of playing it by ear. But so far,
Everybody's a little out of practice, is what you're saying.
yes, because their grandfathers did it. So yeah, everyone's playing by ear, and it seems to be going smoothly. However, I would like to comment on something I did recognize today. Uh, well, no, I know sexy. It's perfectly fine. Um, when I saw Charles get out of the car today, and I shouldn't say it like that, when I saw His Majesty King Charles step out of the vehicle today and walk to the people, first thing I thought was, that's ballsy. Like, one of his security details is clearly a Gurkha. He's huge. He barely fit. It was like a gorilla in a suit. He's that big. He's a big dude. He could probably pick up Charles in the palm of his hand. He was that big. He's like the Great Khali almost. Anyway, he was shocked that he walked straight to the people. And at first I was like, that's a great gesture he's doing for a person who has been struggling to rebuild his public image ever since the death of Diana, which was 25 years ago this year. And I thought it was a great gesture. But that immediately got replaced, because of the world we live in, it was immediately replaced with shock and fear. Because can you imagine the security threat of what would have happened in that crowd of tens of thousands of people who gathered around Buckingham Palace since last night? None of which were screened. No way. They couldn't check all those people. They were crowding in last night. When he walked up to those people and he was within touching them, if there was ever a moment that there was going to be a terrorist attack or an assassination attempt, could you imagine what the world would be like right now if that happened today? Like, if somebody with a bomb or a weapon happened to assassinate the then King Charles III on his first day as monarch? I mean, think about it. The longest ruling monarch has
And the
passed,
shortest.
followed by the shortest living monarch who waited the longest to reign, and we would be talking about the ascension of one King Philip, who is only 40. That would have been really dangerous. And there would have been a war. Like, if it was a terrorist attack with all those people there, there would have been a war. Like, Ukraine would cease to exist as a war because the rest of the world would be stomping in the guts of whoever claimed responsibility.
Well, that would be if the British didn't, blame it on the Russians.
Well, I mean, I'm already into tinfoil hat theory, so they could blame the Irish, I guess. Whatever.
So I see an interesting post on Facebook.
Go on.
Some of you might be familiar with him. Some of you might not be. I know Sean would be.
Go on.
Are you familiar with the chap?
Yes.
Apparently, back in the day when he was a teenager, he met the Queen. And he posted a news article with photo of him with the Queen,
That lucky bastard.
which I happen to put in the meme bomber for you.
So let me get this straight. He owns a Fruworth carbine that I can't get my hands on,
Mm-hmm.
and he's met one of the most influential people in the world.
It gets better.
Go on.
Apparently, according to what little of the news article you can see is, his first name is Fabian,
Wow, okay.
and he is French, and he is French royalty.
The chap.
Yep. Because it says is from France, whose own royal family was sent to the guillotine.
You're going to have to tell Mad Sexy who the chap is.
The chap is a very interesting gentleman from YouTube.
And he is known as?
The chap. You, I think, might be getting him confused with the British muzzleloader
No.
gentleman.
No, I know who that is. I thought he's living in Switzerland right now, right?
Yes.
That's not his YouTube name, though.
No. Shit. I forget what his YouTube name is offhand. But he was just at Finnish Brutality, because there's pictures of him with Mr. Ian McCullum,
Yes.
who was running around butt naked at Finnish Brutality, which I don't want to know how much someone paid him to do that. Because no one willingly is going to do that with that crap.
Why are we having such a hard time remembering this guy's name? We're old. We're sorry. We're old people now. We're forgetting this. Oh, Jesus.
Let me just go look here. I can figure it out. Give me 1 second.
Bloke on the Range.
Yes, Bloke on the Range.
Took me a second. Sorry. That's who it is. You've never heard of Bloke on the Range? Actually, now that he's heard that with the delay, he'll probably be like, oh, that guy. Anyway.
Maybe.
All right. So, okay. So, all things UK aside, because I'm not going to bore you all with that forever. Coincidentally, today in history, the United States of America and the Second Continental Congress officially named the 13 colonies the United States of America. What were the odds of that? Ugh. Let it be known that she did actually like the United States. And let it be known that she did reign over 15 prime ministers and only 14 presidents, despite the fact that there were 15 presidents during her reign. Do you know who the one president she didn't give audience to?
Kennedy?
No.
Really?
Strangely enough, no. The one president that Queen Elizabeth
Obama?
never... No. No, she got along with him great, actually. No, the one president she didn't have audience with is the man who followed Kennedy, Lyndon Baines
Oh, yes,
Johnson.
yeah, I remember that.
And why would that be? Well, first of all, would you want to meet the man who killed his boss? No. I don't think so. Would you want to meet the man who created the Great Society, who is now solely responsible for the radical left we have today? Or the fact that he had created voter blocks by stacking government-dependent voters vertically in high-rise projects? Do you think a royal would want to meet that piece of shit? No.
Oh, it may have had something to do with Vietnam, too.
I just don't think she would want to meet the man who killed his own boss. Now, honestly, of all the conspiracy theories, Lyndon Baines Johnson being responsible for the death of John F. Kennedy, that's the most solid. Because you have to think about
He
who
was
had the most.
probably involved.
Yeah, who had the most to gain? Him. Anyway,
The mob.
I'll leave that debate for E Honda and his panel because
Tinfoil Hat Club.
yeah, pretty sure that'd be a good subject to beat to death, honestly.
I'm sure they already have.
In the Aaron Hernandez suite. Anyway, the congressional decree stated that in all continental commissions and other instruments where heretofore the words United Colonies have been used, the style shall be altered for the future to the United States. That was done September 9th, 1776. The day after, technically, Elizabeth had passed. I just think the odds of that are just bizarre. And then, as you pointed out, 3 days short of 9/11. A lot of things happened on 9/11. Benghazi happened on 9/11. What's going to happen this 9/11? I wonder. I mean, that's another thing, actually, I guess, if we're going to be talking about the royals. The day after 9/11, Queen Elizabeth instructed her musicians to play, I think in front of Buckingham Palace.
Yes, it was.
The national anthem of the United States.
Only time she authorized it, too.
Yep. And in her speech, she said that we share with you in great grief out of great love. Which is, that woman's amazing, let's be honest. All scandal aside of her family, she was pretty amazing.
Well, compared to the rest of her family, she's amazing.
You know, honestly, there's nothing that Kate Middleton has done that's been scandalous. She's been...
No, she has played the part to a T.
She's pretty amazing, too, actually. Like,
now, her half-grandson, on the other hand...
Half-grandson? Wait.
The redheaded bastard stepchild.
Are we talking about the son of one James Hewitt?
Yes. His wife, on the other hand...
That's a theory, too, isn't it?
That's not a theory. You put a picture of Harry next to James Hewitt.
I know. I've been banging that drum for years. Jeremy Clarkson's been banging that drum for like over a decade.
Oh yeah, it's common knowledge.
Yeah.
No, it's the unspeakable knowledge.
Well, to be fair, that was the one standout today that really bothered me. Because what I heard was a father recognizing his two sons with no disrespect to either one of them. What the media portrayed after that was, oh my God, Charles gave titles to Philip, but not to Harry. Oh my God. And I'm just like, no, don't you understand? Harry left royal duties. He left his royal duties. He didn't want them. It's just like Albert's brother didn't want to be king. He wanted to marry Wallis Simpson. He abdicated. He went after what he wanted in life. The crown allowed it. The same thing can be said about Harry. He wanted to be out of the public life. He is out of it. He doesn't have royal responsibilities. He was not stripped of his title of Duke of Sussex. But they didn't mention it either because it was inappropriate to do so. It wasn't about him. Today's speech was about the mourning of his mother and the ascension of his son as the next heir. That's it. And he said that he has love for his son Harry, and he wishes him and his wife the best for their life that they're building abroad. Like, take it at face value. Despite the fact that the media keeps telling you, oh, you can't do that with the royals, it's always about the hidden message. It's like, for once, can you just leave it alone and just say, look, he loves his sons. End of story. Like, can you not have to stir up scandal? Don't they have enough to deal with right now? I don't get it.
Oh, let's face it. The family's been planning this for decades.
What, the Ascension?
Yes.
Well, yeah, the what was it they called it? Operation London Bridge has been in place for, I think, more than 25 years, 25 or 30 years. For sure. I guess she must have had a health scare back then that started making them build a contingency plan.
It's either that or the whole Diana dying thing.
Might have set that emotion. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Sure, because that was 25 years ago. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I see we have an angry turtle out in the comment section.
Yeah, I know, but he doesn't have Discord, so I don't care. Like, nobody can make excuses for 4 years not to make it work.
Yep.
All right, so
if I can figure it out, he could figure it out. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you do it through a phone, of all things.
Yep.
So anyway, okay, all royalty stuff aside, it really bugged me. And I think she was a great person, and I really would have loved to have met her, even though I probably wouldn't be allowed within 100 feet of her, because, security, whatever, be cool. But I don't know, it's going to bug me for a while. It really is. I'm not going to be... It's going to be hard for me to get used to the fact that they have to change the national anthem again. They're going to change the currency. They're going to change the stamps. I don't even
wonder how much that's going to...
What's that?
Wonder how much that's going to cost.
The stamps and everything?
Yeah, changing the money over, the stamp.
I mean, we do it. We changed the quarter recently, right? We changed... What
yeah, but it's hugely expensive to do it.
Yeah. But I mean, the mids have to upgrade.
100.
Yeah, and the mids
I think 100 was the last one we changed because counterfeiters.
No, I thought they got rid of Jackson. Or they want to. Maybe it's
what they want.
Maybe it's because they want to.
Yes,
way.
I am a shit poster, Mad Sexy. I like to stir the pot.
No, I think he just meant what I was saying about the Discord thing.
That's what I mean.
Oh.
Why do you think I brought it up? Because I like to stir the pot.
At least with the national anthem thing, they just changed one word. But it's going to be so weird because the anthem of God Save the King hasn't been uttered for 70 years. Like, every time I watch British boxing, it's God Save the Queen.
No, here's the other thing. All that money now is collectible.
There's so much of it out there in circulation.
Yeah, but people will keep it because it's her.
Mad Sexy asks me if given the chance would I have dinner with the royal family. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Oh, that's the other thing. The cook that was interviewed yesterday revealed something very strange to me. He said that Elizabeth ate the same thing every day at the same time every day. That's weird. For 16 years? Now, he also mentioned that if he wanted to present a different dish, he would have to present the name of the dish along with the ingredients list for her to look at and approve. And one time, he made the mistake, and he sent a recipe called The Poor Farmer's Daughter. Something like that. And He sent it without the ingredients list. She summoned the cook, and he said, "Yes, Your Majesty." And she said, "I want you to put it bluntly, but I want you to explain to me who is the poor farmer's daughter, and what problem does she have that I might be able to resolve?" He just says, "What are you? Oh my God!" And she goes, "I was handed this paper that says this on it, and I thought it was so important to you that you needed me to speak on it." And he was like, "I'm so sorry. That's a recipe. I forgot to give you the ingredients list." And she said, "Well, go on and work on the recipe, but I still want to know who this person is." What a cool person. Yes, I would absolutely have dinner with the royal family. Uh, I guess to expand on your question, does it have to be all of them? Like, would it be all of them, like, say, Christmas time where they're all together? Or are you talking about just the immediates, like Charles and Camilla? Or Philip and Catherine, Kate Middleton? I can't call her that anymore. It's Princess Middleton now, actually. Princess Kate Middleton. Princess Catherine. Sorry. There you go. She is now Princess Catherine of Wales, actually. That was her title given to her today. Mr. Knives is asking, what are they going to do with the battleship Texas? It was put into dry dock about a week ago. They have descaled the hull, and they are replacing the
Hull plates that are rotted.
That are rotted off, yeah. Whichever one I like. I can't.
About $35 million worth of work that is going to be getting done.
I'm gonna say yes. I still would. I can't detail anyone specific, because if I did, I could probably be brought up on charges, arrested, and hung at the tower, off a Tower Bridge. Brown chicken, brown.
They only do that in the old days.
My offense would be so egregious that they would bring it back. Anyway, Diana 2.0. Let's go ahead and get on to the stories, because we have spent 43 minutes of your time. I didn't think that segment was going to be that long, but I'm very grateful that you all let me get onto it, because it helped me sort of deal with it. And it's going to bug me still, but I'll cope. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I have no fascination with the royal family, so it's like,
it's funny.
Okay.
I don't either. Like, when King Consort Philip had died, I was the first person to say, who cares? It's the royal family. Why is everyone so obsessed with it? And yet this happened, and look what I've done for 43 minutes. So maybe it was just individuals in it that make me do this. I don't know. I think she was a cool lady. I think Elizabeth was a fantastic individual, human being-wise. Like Mother Teresa level cool. Well, okay, Mad Sexy. I'll answer it. I would like to have dinner with Kate Middleton, because she reminds me of a girl I used to date. I'd also like to have hot dogs and drink beer and go to the shooting range with Prince Harry, because why not, right? I don't know if I would hang out with Philip, but I would definitely hang out with King Charles. Absolutely, because I would want to ask him about any shenanigans he did hanging out with Sir Ranulph Fiennes, because there's a really good documentary that came out this year called Explorer, and it's the life and times biography of Sir Ranulph Fiennes. You might recognize that name because his nephew is actor Ralph Fiennes. But Sir Ranulph Fiennes, back in the 60s, I think, back when he was doing all of his Action Man polar Arctic expeditions, there were these video clips of him hanging out with Prince Charles, and they were like bros. Like, they looked a bit alike. And, they were showing like early video of him before he auditioned to be James Bond. Truth be told, he wasn't a bad looking dude. Like, he could have got the role. But Cubby Broccoli took one look at him and says, "Your hands are too big and you have the face of a farmer." Like, ultimate insult. And then they hired the Scotsman. Go figure. No, I think he was actually supposed to take over after the Scotsman. I think he was supposed to take over before Roger Moore was picked up. Either way, whatever. I'd have dinner with them all, let's be honest. Kate Middleton especially. And Prince Harry especially. Like, absolutely. I'd hang out with Meghan Markle too. Just because, honestly, I didn't know who she was before she married. Seriously. Like, I know everyone knows who she was. I didn't. So it's like, I don't know her past. I don't care. I just don't care. It's like, whatever. I'll hang out with you. She needs friends. I'll be one. Whatever. I bet she's less scandalous than a Kardashian. Just saying. Alright. Story time over. Let's get to the news. Because the rest of this episode, I know it's getting sort of old, but it's that nation of Ukraine and that part of Europe, the eastern half of Europe, is literally on the threat of nuclear apocalypse. Constantly. Well, you can't have dinner with Princess Diana Mad Sexy. She's been dead for 25 years. I mean, if we were going to talk about who you want to have dinner from anybody in the royal family, King George V. They named my favorite scotch after him, for God's sakes. King George V was a badass. Anyway, Albert was pretty cool too, actually. Anyway, I'm going to go back to the news now. First story. So we're covering days 192 through 199, the week. Strangely enough, though, I don't have a story from day 192. We're going to start from Sunday, day 193, which happened to have also been my mom's 71st birthday. But don't let her know I told you how old she is. You'd go back in time just for her. Yeah, okay. Well, Ooh, man, what would it have been like to go back in time to meet Queen Elizabeth age 21? No, sorry, age 12. Because apparently she was love at first sight with Philip at 13. So you'd have to kind of shove him out of the way. Yeah? Anyway. Boy, now this is blasphemous talk. We can't do that. First story. Here we go. Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia's nuclear power plant lost its last line of external power on Saturday, with just one of its 6 reactors remaining in operation. 5 reactors broken. The Russian military has held the power plant since the early days of Russian President Vladimir Putin's February invasion. The cutoff of the plant's final main power line leaves only a reserve line to supply electricity to Ukraine's grid. The Zaporizhzhia power plant is the world's largest nuclear plant in Europe. Sorry, I don't know why I put worlds in there. It's the largest nuclear plant in Europe. And experts have warned that Russia's invasion could cause a Chernobyl-style disaster at the plant. The UN's International Atomic Energy Agency deployed a team to the plant to inspect it. The team's arrival was delayed due to Russian shelling along the road that they planned to take. The stress at Ukraine's plant comes as the rest of Europe turns toward nuclear energy to help offset the loss of oil and natural gas imports from Russia. Germany was scheduled to close all of its reactors by the end of the year, but is now debating whether to keep them open into next year or even longer. Belgium, meanwhile, was planning to close 2 reactors by 2025, but will now keep them open through 2036, according to the Wall Street Journal. France is looking to build an additional 14 reactors over the next several decades. The UK, Czech Republic, Poland, and others are also planning for new reactors, according to the report. Gee, it's almost as if the world of Fallout is becoming a reality, where the cleanest energy source you can get is harnessed from the atom, which takes you off of dependence of foreign oil. It's almost as if we here in the United States knew that ever since 1946, and yet we've done nothing with it. Because of nuclear waste. Me. Anyway, moving on. There's going to be a lot of overlap in the stories, I suspect. I didn't have a chance to proof them all the way through, but in case there is, my apologies. This came later the same day, Saturday evening. And it says Ukrainian President Zelensky accused Russia of using energy as a weapon by keeping a critical pipeline to Germany shut down in recent days, exacerbating electricity and natural gas shortfalls ahead of the winter months. Russia wants to destroy the normal life of every European and all countries of our continent, Zelensky said in his nightly address on Saturday. Where Russia cannot do it by force of conventional weapons, it does so by force of energy weapons. It is trying to attack with poverty and political chaos where it cannot yet attack with missiles. This winter, Russia is preparing for a decisive energy attack on all Europeans. Russian energy company Gazprom has blamed technical problems for this week's shutdown of Nord Stream 1, saying that oil leaks in turbines must be fixed before natural gas flows resume. Germany's Siemens Energy, which manufactures turbines that Nord Stream 1 uses, dismissed Gazprom's explanation for the shutdown, saying that turbine leaks can be fixed while the gas flows. Now, if anyone's going to tell you how something works, it's going to be a German engineer. There is nothing finer than a German engineer. Like,
Oh, except the Japanese one.
no, see, I think the Germans engineer things the best, but Japanese, they streamline it the best. And I think the Swiss build it the best. Like, imagine if you had all three.
So winner.
Yeah. All right, so European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen blamed Russian President Putin's invasion of Ukraine for surging energy prices that said Norway and the U.S. are now supplying natural gas to energy-starved European nations. We see that the electricity market is no longer operating because it is being severely disrupted by Putin's manipulation, she says Friday. Parts of Ukraine have also been without electricity recently due to fighting around the Zaporizhizhia nuclear power plant, which is the largest in Europe. There's your overlap. The plant was temporarily disconnected from its last main external power line on Saturday, the IAEA agency says. A 14-member delegation from the United Nations Nuclear Agency visited the besieged plant this week to assess damage. Russian forces took the facility over in March, but the plant's Ukrainian staff have continued operations. Believe me, we're going to expand on that statement a lot tonight. Moving on. Monday, the 5th, day 194. Here. Ukraine's Minister of Energy warned Monday that the world is once again on the brink of nuclear disaster after heavy shelling brought down Europe's largest nuclear plant's last transmission line. In a written message shared on Facebook on Monday, Ukrainian Energy Secretary German Galushenko, his name is German, what a boss, Galushenko, said that the majority of the IAEA mission has left the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, as the station is depleted again. The last line connecting it with the energy system of Ukraine, LEP 330 kilowatt Zates, Ferosplavna, separated due to the fire that occurred as a result of shelling, Galushenko wrote. Any repair of the lines are impossible now. There are combat operations all around the station. The world is once again on the brink of nuclear disaster, he added, deoccupying the UPP, that's the, why is it U? Oh well. And creating a demilitarized zone around it is the only way to ensure nuclear security. Energoatom, the facility's operator, said in a statement that Russian forces have kept up intensive shelling of the area around Zaporizhzhia for several days. This is a real dangerous situation. It's not just Ukrainians who are worried about it. This came from Rebecca Koffler, former Defense Intelligence Agency officer. International experts in nuclear security have been concerned for the past several months. Structurally, the plant is degraded to the point where it is basically on its last legs. The IAEA, UN watchdog, said last Saturday that the plant had lost its main line due to the grid, but was still sending power to the grid through a reserve line. Monday's developments came a day before UN inspectors were due to report on their efforts to avert a potential disaster at the Ukrainian site that has been engulfed by Russia's war. Russian military had earlier Monday accused Ukrainian forces of staging provocations at the plant, which lies within a Russian-installed administrative area. This is part of the Russians' asymmetric warfare. They captured the Zaporizhizhia nuclear power plant about a week after Russian forces invaded Ukraine, Koffler added. The idea is not necessarily to cause a nuclear disaster, because that would be bad for Russia, also giving its proximity. But the idea is twofold. First is to threaten, to have this sword hanging over the Ukrainians' and Europeans' head to potential radiation and nuclear leaks. But then the second, the practical reason, is to actually cut the electricity from Ukrainians in order to freeze them out in winter, because this plant supplies 20% of all the nation's electricity there. Russians have been using this plant as cover to strike the Ukrainians when the Ukrainians shell. Nobody is targeting advertently the reactors. Nobody wants that. But that's the outcome that the plant has been degraded, Koffler added. Russia's defense ministry claimed that Kyiv's forces on Sunday targeted the territory of the plant with a drone, which said European troops were able to shoot down. If that was true, you'd have saw a photo of it on social media. The ministry said Ukrainian troops also shelled the adjacent city of Enerhodar twice overnight. The two sides have traded accusations about endangering the plant, which the Kremlin's forces have held since early March. The plant's Ukrainian staff continue to operate it. Again, we're going to expand on that later. In a perilous mission, experts with the IAEA traveled through the war zone to reach the plant last week. 4 of 6 UN nuclear agency inspectors have completed their work and left the site. Energoatom? Goatom? We'll just call him Energoatom. Ukraine's state nuclear power plant operator said Monday. 2 of the experts are expected to stay at the plant on a permanent basis, Energoatom had said. Ukraine's presidential advisor, Mikhailo Podolyak, yeah, I nailed that one, applauded the IAEA's decision to leave some experts at the plant. There are Russian troops now who don't understand what's happening. They don't assess the risks correctly, Podolyak said. There's a number of our workers there who need some kind of protection, people from the international community standing by their side and telling Russian troops, don't touch those people, let them work. Leave them the fuck alone. The UN inspectors are scheduled to brief the Security Council on Tuesday about what they found on their visit. The plant is largely crippled amid a grinding war that has clobbered energy markets. That was just Monday's news. But it's going to continue. Tuesday, September 6th, day 195. Look at that. We're getting through these pretty quickly. And there's a picture of this prick here. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed off on a new foreign policy plan Monday that is based on, quote, a Russian world concept, which relies on radical policies like those used to justify Moscow's war in Ukraine. In a 31-page document dubbed a, quote, humanitarian policy, Moscow has made it official doctrine to, quote, protect, safeguard, and advance the traditions and ideas of the Russian world, according to translations by Reuters. Though the idea was presented as a new soft power strategy for Moscow, the hardliner concept has now been enshrined into Russia's official foreign policy approach. The document reportedly said Moscow will deepen its ties with ethnic Russians living and abroad, particularly in former Soviet states that separated from the USSR in the 1990s. Putin has alleged that some 25 million ethnic Russians living in these former Soviet states have been oppressed since the USSR collapsed, which he has deemed the, quote, greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century, and used as a line of reasoning to justify his invasion of Ukraine more than 6 months ago. Sidebar: 25 million ethnic Russians living in former Soviet states are not oppressed. They ran the fuck away from USSR. They're not oppressed. They're free from you.
No. They are oppressed
Go
by
on.
their own government,
Well, no, because they're not in that
which
country
is why
anymore.
they left.
Right. They're
They were
free.
oppressed.
Yeah, they're free of oppression now. They're free of him.
Yep.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have left. Or they would have left when the country changed hands, right? Like, oh, yeah, I don't like this. I'm out of here. I.e. California and the mass migration to Texas. Anyway. One aspect of the strategy reportedly called for Russia to deepen its ties with the Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics in Ukraine, which Moscow says it plans to illegally annex from its southern neighbor. However, the latest foreign policy strategy went beyond Moscow's plans for Ukraine and went on to say that it should deepen its relations with the, Abkhazia and Ossetia regions in Georgia, which it deemed independent following its illegal invasion there back in 2008. Russia claimed that bolstering its influence abroad will, quote, strengthen on the international stage its image as a domestic country striving for the creation of a multipolar world. Right? The policy also called for Russia to increase cooperation with Slavic nations, China, and India, as well as strengthen relations with nations in the Middle East, Latin America, and Africa. Russia has long held the belief that it maintains... Wait a minute. Wait the fucking minute. Wants to increase cooperations with Slavic nations, which means he wants to put Yugoslavia back under the Iron Curtain. China. You're saying that to maintain a good public image. India, who is scared shitless of you right now because their military is not ready yet. As well as strengthen relations in the Middle East. Because Iran's supplying you with drones.
Syria.
Latin America and Africa. You're not going to get your hands on either one of those two because the Chinese already have their hands on those two. That's why they have naval bases off the west coast of Latin America and the eastern coasts of Africa already. You're not getting your hands on that shit. Like, get that out of your twisted little head. Anyway. Russia has long held the belief that it maintains a sphere of influence over Slavic states, which range from Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia in the west, Belarus and Ukraine in the east, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Serbia. He's just naming all of Yugoslavia there. Bulgaria, North Macedonia, Montenegro, and Slovenia in the south. He also took half the he took all Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic and Slovakia.
Yep.
I think
and Poland.
Yeah, I don't think any one of those guys want anything to do with you, bro.
No, at this point, I think they'd like to nuke you for all the crap you did to them for the last 70 years.
I think every nation that he just named in that right there should band together and be like, fuck you.
Considering Poland has the largest tank force out of any country in Europe.
My favorite thing about the Polish tank force is they
have everything.
They have every model of NATO tank and Russian tank
and
in their
Soviet.
inventory. Yeah, which means they know all the strengths and all the weaknesses of everyone's shit. That is.
Did you see the latest?
That's not the porcupine you want to fuck with.
Did you see the latest news about Poland?
Go on.
They are in the process of acquiring over 100 Apaches.
Yes, they did. They put in a request to buy 100 of them. I think it was 122 actually, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should
of the latest generation, the E model.
Let's hook them up.
Which are pretty sweet machines.
I want to see Grim Reapers do an Apache night vision attack with Polish Apaches. That would be cool.
120 Polish Apaches versus a 40-mile long convoy?
No. 122 Polish Apaches striking targets all over Belarus to send a message to Moscow.
Better yet.
The death
where
of
would those
Lukashenko.
Apaches? Where would those Apaches be best used first? Reacquiring part of Poland that they do not currently hold.
Oh, I like that idea. Kaliningrad?
Yes.
Yeah, I like that idea. But I mean, once Russia loses this war, Kaliningrad's going to be surrendered. It has to be. That has to be the punishment. NATO, if any of you idiots from NATO or
Do it.
the EU or the UN are listening to this podcast, if Russia loses this war and you take back Kaliningrad and give it back to Poland as reparations, you will name the square in Kaliningrad Pwnery Square. Because it was my idea, fuckers. I don't have to take over. Just name it after me. I don't have to marshal it. Just name it after me.
Put a giant Darth Vader statue.
Carve my avatar into it. That'd be cool. Anyway, moving on. Oh, I forgot this last part. You're gonna love this. Leaders from all of those nations have long contested Russia's assumed influence over them. Very, very carefully worded. Long contested Russia's, quote, assumed influence. They were like, you're fucking talking out of your ass. That's basically what they're telling him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not going under the Iron Curtain again. You can
Fuck
go
that.
yourself.
No way. All right. So also on Tuesday, I think I had several Tuesday stories. So this is gonna be another good one. Here you go. Picture. This is reactor number 2 at Zaporizhizhia, by the way. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky warned against the continued threat of a radiation disaster at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as a UN team prepares to release their report on the nation's condition Tuesday. Ukraine and Russia have both accused each other of targeting the plant in a barrage of shelling that has repeatedly caused some level of damage to the plant. Most recently cutting the plant's nuclear reactors off the Ukrainian national electrical grid for the second time, Monday. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi is expected to brief the UN Security Council Tuesday, following a fact-finding mission he led with a team of 13 other experts to review and analyze the condition of the plant last week. Though it remains unclear if Grossi's findings will identify which forces have been targeting the plant, a security threat that Ukrainian and European officials have warned could prompt a nuclear debacle greater than what the world saw during the '86 Chernobyl disaster. As a side note, Chernobyl had 4 reactors, 1 went up. It was an accident that led to a meltdown which flipped the lid of the reactor like a quarter, and it caused enough nuclear fallout that blanketed all of Europe and stretched as far as Iceland. Now, granted, by the time it got to Iceland, it was a lot less radiation, but it still did it. That's the point. Zaporizhzhia
And I think there's about
Hmm.
I think there's about 100 square miles they still
can't
have
touch.
as an exclusion zone
Yeah. Well,
around Chernobyl.
Clarkson drove
Unless you're-
right up to it, by the way.
Unless you're idiotic Russian troops digging trenches at Chernobyl.
Yeah. Well, truth be told,
And then
Clarkson
have to get
drove
sent
into
for
it.
radiation treatment.
I don't know if you remember that episode. He literally drove
No.
in it. His Geiger counter went crazy.
Yeah.
But, you know.
But that was all planned. Anybody to go in the exclusion
was the
zone has
exclusion
to be
zone.
authorized.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you're only
they
allowed to
gotta
be there for a
get
certain amount of time.
authorized. Yes.
And the worst
And
part
you're
was he
usually
ran
not
out of
allowed to
gas.
just roam around in there by yourself.
He ran out of gas in there. So then he needed a ride.
I think that might have been
That was,
dramatized for TV.
well, it was one of those driving challenges. So he probably just hopped a film crew vehicle to get the hell out of there. Because I think you're right.
Yeah.
You have to be authorized to go in. Once you're in, you're only allowed to be in there for a
You're
certain amount of time.
babysat.
Well, you're only allowed to be in for a certain
You are
amount of time,
escorted.
and you have to get out.
Yes, but you're escorted around.
You think so?
You're not just yes, absolutely.
Even with
Because-
GPS.
Yes, because Jeremy Wade,
Mhm.
the guy from River Monsters, built the cooling ponds at Chernobyl, and he was escorted everywhere he went.
What did he find in there?
Fish?
3-eyed?
No, I don't think he found any 3-eyed, but they were definitely mutated.
Oh, you need to find me that. I want to watch that. All right. So, anyway, yes, this could be worse than Chernobyl, because Chernobyl was one reactor that went up. This is 6 reactors under artillery barrage, and they're all lined up like dominoes. One goes up, they all go up. You can't shut them down fast enough because they're within such close proximity of each other that even like the freaking earthquake meters and shit wouldn't catch it in time. No way. They would just boom, 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 Roman candles. So that's what they're basically insinuating. Anyway, Russian soldiers have occupied the plant since early March, though Ukrainian technicians have continued to oversee the station's operations. Again, we're going to expand on that later. I have a story about that. Zelensky accused Russia of once again hitting the plant and said that the timing of the strike was, quote, provocative. I consider the fact that Russia is doing this right now, right on the eve of the IAEA conclusions. Very eloquent, he said in a Monday night address to the nation. Shelling the territory of the power plant means that the terrorist state does not care what the IAEA says. It does not care what the international community decides. Zelensky's comments came just hours after the... My dog is going nuts in there. Sorry. That derailed me a bit. Hang on a second. Russian soldiers have occupied the plant since early March, though Ukrainian technicians have continued to oversee the operations. Zelensky accused Russia of once again hitting the plant, saying the time was provocative. I already said all this part. Shelling of the territory of the ZNPP means that the terrorist state does not care what the IAEA says. It does not care what the international community decides. Zelensky's comment came just hours after the officials said that the plant's only remaining reactor had been disconnected from Ukraine's electrical grid after a backup power line had to be cut while a fire was extinguished. The reactor is expected to be reconnected to the grid once plant technicians can safely do so. Nobody has been able to independently verify Ukrainian or Russian accusations regarding who is actually attacking the plant. That's kind of messed up. Anyway. Moving on. Also Tuesday. Maybe she's actually eating with fervor. I don't know. I'll have to look after the show. Nuclear watchdog. UN nuclear watchdog. IAEA. Let's see. Mad Sexy's got to go. Says if I don't go live and talk about the royal family, if I want to go live and talk about the royal family tomorrow, he'll join us in the chat. Take care. All right, we'll see you later. Thanks for being in here. And we'll probably catch you on the replay anyway. All right, so, UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, said Tuesday it found damage caused to buildings at the Zaporizhizhia power plant that are housing fresh nuclear fuel and solid radioactive waste. The team closely witnessed shelling in the vicinity of the power plant, in particular on the 3rd of September, when the team was instructed to evacuate to the ground level of the administrative building. Report by IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi told the UN Security Council. Moreover, the team observed damage at different locations caused by reported events, with some of the damage being close to the nuclear reactor buildings. Grossi's report Tuesday is the first update in the international community. Let me start that one over. Grossi's report Tuesday is the first update the international community has received on Europe's largest nuclear power plant since Russia invaded Ukraine back in February. The ZNPP has seen repeated damage caused by shelling that has hit the plant's power lines connecting it to Ukraine's electrical grid as well as its structural integrity. In his report, Grossi detailed several events that have significantly compromised the plant's 7 pillars, a standard at which the IAEA bases its security guidelines, since the ZNPP, Zaporizhizhia nuclear power plant, was first occupied in early March by Russian forces. The IAEA chief laid out a litany of concerns relating to damages inflicted on the plant's electrical system, harm caused to the central alarm station, and damage inflicted on a container where the radiation monitoring systems are located. The IAEA report also noted with concern that the shelling could have impacted safety-regulated structures, systems, and components, and could have caused safety significant impacts, loss of lives, and personal injuries. Both Russia and Ukraine have accused each other of targeting the nuclear power plant, though IAEA report did not clarify who's responsible for those attacks. Grossi noted that though the shelling has not yet triggered a nuclear emergency, the attacks remain a constant threat to nuclear safety and security, because critical safety functions, containment of that radioactivity and cooling in particular, will be impacted. The IAEA Director General is set to brief the UN Security Council Tuesday afternoon, though it is unclear if he will detail who targeted the plant. Of course not, because he's not a forensic pathologist. Moving on to Wednesday, September 7th, day 196. I have this photo here. It's almost a meeting where the guy's looking at the phone, and that happens to be President Volodymyr Zelensky, looking at the phone going, "Are you fucking kidding me?" That's like the look on his face. Ukrainian officials say shelling in the area of Ukraine's nuclear power plant is continuing to rage on. This is the day after, by the way, so we're Wednesday, right? Despite a report from the IAEA on Tuesday warning about catastrophic damage taking place at the site. The city of Nikopol, located on the opposite bank of the Dnieper River from Europe's largest nuclear power plant, was fired on with rockets heavy artillery. Regional Governor Valentin Reznichenko said on Wednesday. I got that one right on the first try, too. There are fires, blackouts, and other things at the plant that force us to prepare the local population for the consequences of the nuclear danger, Reznichenko says. Officials in recent days have distributed iodine pills to residents to help protect them in the event of a radiation leak. Why don't you give them red wine? It worked on K-19. Just saying. Because we are the cream of the Soviet Navy. No, it's because strontium absorbs radiation. I think it's strontium, right? It's part of the movie. Reports of the shelling, which could not be independently verified by the AP, come the day after the IAEA General Rafael Grossi presented a report to the UN warning about the potential danger of the nuclear site being compromised by shelling. We are playing with fire, and something very, very catastrophic could take place, he says. The UN Atomic Watchdog Agency urged Russia and Ukraine to establish a nuclear safety and security protection zone around the plant. Neither Moscow nor Kyiv officials would immediately commit to the idea of a safety zone, saying more details of the proposal were needed. Both Russia and Ukraine have accused each other of targeting the nuclear power plant, though the IAEA report could not clarify who is responsible for the attacks on the nuclear power plant. The shelling around the plant and a fire that caused it to be taken offline Monday have experts worried about a potential nuclear disaster at the plant, one of the 10 biggest plants in the world. I should have did that in Clarkson's voice. In the world. Sorry. Experts say its reactors are designed to protect against nuclear disasters and incidents such as aircraft crashes, but leaders around the world have appealed for it to be spared in the fighting because of the risk of a catastrophe. Let's seize this opportunity so fundamentals for peace, for security, and to protect the populations of Ukraine and beyond, Grossi said Tuesday, while calling for a safety zone around the plant. Rebecca Koffler, former USDIA intelligence officer, focused on Russia and the author of Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America, says that the ZNPP provides Ukraine with 20% of its energy, and Russia would benefit strategically if it were to be taken offline for a long period of time heading into the winter. Decommissioning ZNPP temporarily to disconnect it from the Ukrainian power grid and reconnect it to the Russian grid would allow Russia to have control over it, so they can keep the power in Russian-controlled territories and keep it on and off in other regions in Ukraine. This is part of an asymmetric strategy to keep pressure on Ukraine's civilian population to degrade their will to fight and to surrender. Well, no shit. Continuing on Wednesday, we have this picture. So, there you can see the dominoes all lined up, one after another, after another, after another, after another, and after another. All 6. Nice little ducks in a row. Ukrainian officials voiced support for deploying UN peacekeeper troops to establish a demilitarized zone around Zaporizhzhia's nuclear power plant. Sidebar. When this war began, Ukraine had warned the UN for almost a year that an attack was coming. They begged the UN, please cover the skies over our country, install a no-fly zone. Stop them before the war starts. You've seen them build up around my country for a year. It fell on deaf ears. Ukrainian officials are voicing support for United Nations peacekeeper troops to come to the nuclear power plant on the eastern front of Ukraine. Even more dangerous for the UN. Do you honestly think they're going to answer if they wouldn't even install a no-fly zone? Ukraine's support for the move comes one day after the IAEA warned of a potentially catastrophic disaster at the plant. The team deployed to the Ukraine went to inspect the facility last week. IAEA General Director Rafael Grossi called for the demilitarized zone around the station. The first important safety pillar that exists in any nuclear facility is not to violate its physical integrity, Grossi says. And unfortunately, this has happened. This happened, and this continues to happen. The physical attack, wittingly or unwittingly, the hits that this facility has received, and that I could personally see and assess together with my experts, is simply unacceptable. We are playing with fire, and something very, very catastrophic could take place. Ukraine and Russia blame each other for the shelling at the facility, which is still ongoing. Russia's Foreign Minister, Sergei Lapdog, withheld judgment on the IAEA's report Tuesday, saying that he needed clarifications from Grossi. There is a need to get additional clarifications because the report contains a number of issues, says Lavrov. I will not list them, but we requested these clarifications from the IAEA Director General. Russia's military took over the power plant in the opening weeks of the invasion. Last week, they accused Ukraine of attempting to install spies at the facility ahead of the UN visit. Russia claims Ukrainian operatives posed as journalists to attempt to enter the plant. Vladimir Rodgov, a Moscow-appointed regional official, told Russian state-owned media outlet RIA. So they went in with spies first, posing as media. So it gave them forward intel, so it makes them more efficient to take it over? That sound about right? Yeah. Continuing on, Wednesday, still. And this is a picture of the UN bailing the fuck out. One day after the IAEA concluded its fact-finding mission at ZNPP, top Ukrainian officials urged its citizens Wednesday to evacuate the area amid renewed shelling. The mayor of Enerhodar, the city closest to the nuclear power plant, took to Telegram to say his city had once again lost power and accused Russia of firing on the power station. The intervals between attacks are becoming shorter and shorter. It is the second time in a day that the electricity supply has gone off throughout the city. He says this in a post translated by Pravda, noting that it was not possible to determine when repair crews would be able to get the power back on. Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk urged all Ukrainians still in the Zaporizhzhia region to evacuate as soon as possible and said calls for a humanitarian corridor were met with cynical silence from Russia. I appeal to all the residents of the districts temporarily not under the control of the government of Ukraine, adjacent to the ZNPP. Evacuate. Find a way to get to the controlled territory. Vereshchuk accused Russia of holding ZNPP staff and tens of thousands of surrounding citizens hostage as they allegedly continued to strike the nuclear power plant. IAEA Director Rafael Grossi on Tuesday warned in an address at the United Nations Security Council that something very catastrophic could take place if actions were not taken to protect the plant. Both Ukraine and Russia have accused each other of carrying out the attacks on the station. Grossi did not shed light on who's responsible, but urged the UN to take action to prevent the disaster. It is unclear if staff at the ZNPP are being held hostage at this time. That is the first time since any of the stories I've written to you about the plant that finally addressed what's going on with those in the plant. They have been held hostage for months. What's funny is, that shouldn't come as a surprise to any of you because they were held hostage at the plant at Chernobyl back in March for, I think it was 48 days. Some without sleep or food for several days. Some had to be evac'd out medically because they were too weak to stand up. Of course they're being held hostage. We'll expand on that. I think there's another story for that. It is unclear if the staff are being held hostage at this time. Late last month, a former plant employee who left in August... Oh yeah, that's right. Late last month, a former plant employee who left in August said that staff were not being forced to stay at their posts. Grassi, however, noted that extreme conditions that Ukrainian staff members are facing at the plant, along with unreasonably long hours that they were required to work due to staffing shortages. This is not sustainable and could lead to an increased human error with implications for nuclear safety, he warns. The UN has repeatedly called for Russia to demilitarize the plant and allow Ukrainian staff to return to their work and secure not only Ukraine's, but Europe's nuclear safety. How about also the western part of Russia's nuclear safety? Because, I mean, if that plant goes up, that fallout cloud goes in every direction, which means he's endangering his own people. Common sense and cooperation must guide the way forward. Any action that might endanger the physical integrity, safety, or security of the nuclear power plant is unacceptable. This came from Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Guterres called on Russia to remove its troops and military equipment from the nuclear power plant and for Ukraine to commit not to move its troops in afterwards. 2 IAEA officials have remained at the plant following the historic mission there this week. Listen, my dad used to have this saying that if you hold out your hand in front of you and you took the other one and put it behind your back, see which one fills up first. You're not going to tell people to leave the plant, and you're not going to tell people not to move into the plant, because you're not their boss. Your intentions are good, but your actual hold on them is negligible at best. It's feel-goodism. Anyway, I have a funny story for like what I would call halftime. So we're going to take a short break from the stories for a second, because I did read something rather comical. We don't have much detail on it because news from this country is scant, almost non-existent. But Scott and I have been banging on back and forth about it, and I think between the two of us we'll be able to at least break the tension of the stories of the day a little bit. The headline of the story was called, "Who Are Putin's Allies?" And on a cursory glance, it wasn't very well written, but the theme of the story that I took from it was, Russia looks to secure an weapons deal from North Korea, of all places. What in the hell could they get that they can't make themselves from North Korea? And then it sort of hit me. Sell Soviet stuff, or Soviet army stuff, is actually based in Sevastopol, Ukraine, Crimea. If Russia does an arms deal with North Korea, then people like me and many of you are going to benefit from the multitudes of military surplus North Korean AK-47 helical drum magazines. Those really cool ones that run the entire length under the barrel. I don't know if you've ever seen those before. I think they hold, what, 70 rounds or 100 rounds, Scott?
It depends on the caliber.
7.62
Probably like 70, 75 rounds.
That would be so cool.
They kind of look like an underbarrel grenade launcher.
It reminds me of the Calico thing, just on the bottom. Yeah, like a grenade launcher, exactly. It clips into the magwell, and then it pivots up and snaps onto the bayonet lug, essentially.
Yeah.
Or I think what you got to do is you get to rock it up underneath the bayonet lug first, and then clip it up into the magwell. I think you have to slip it into a slot up there first, and then pivot it up. Either way, think about if we get like crates of those as surplus in like 5 years. I'd be the first one in line to grab at least half a dozen of them. Just because when are you ever going to see those again?
Never.
How cool is that? In another weird twist, the United States and NATO have decided to levy sanctions on, quote, specific peoples involved in the Iranian drone deal with Russia. Question. Have you ever heard the saying that you can't take nothing from nothing? It's like dividing by zero, right? How are you going to sanction the most sanctioned nation on earth? You can't. What more can you take from them? They got nothing that you can take, that is. It's just hilarity. Anyway, back to the stories. That was just a little tension breaker. Thursday. Big boy AK mag. Yeah, exactly. Thursday, September 8th. We're almost done. We made it. I think it's going to be under 2 hours. Thank God. Day 197. This picture goes here. You might recognize that man with scrotums for eyelids. Not Bill Clinton. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, confirmed Thursday that Ukraine has officially launched a major counteroffensive along its 1,500-mile-long front lines in a move to repel Russian forces from its borders. Quick little sidebar here. Ukraine has been trying to get into NATO since 2014. They have, they've been trying to get in since 2014. They haven't been allowed in. Finland had requested to join NATO and was granted access to NATO in 10 days. Now, granted, the whole process took about a month, but the approval process took 10 days. Their argument was they share an 890-mile border, 890-mile long border with Russia, and they are worried for their national security. Ukraine is fighting on a counteroffensive that's 1,500 miles long, and they weren't allowed into NATO. What the fuck? At the beginning of this month, on or about the 1st of September, Ukraine launched an offensive in order to seize operational and strategic initiative. The offensive is ongoing, Milley told reporters at Ramstein Air Force Base, Germany. That offensive is still in its early stages. Milley said that it was too early to provide an assessment of how Ukraine is progressing, though reporting this week has suggested that Ukrainian forces have made some operational advances in the Kharkiv region in the north as well as the Kherson region in the south. Ukrainians have demonstrated superior tactical proficiency, and they've demonstrated a superior will to fight, he added. The general said Ukrainian forces are effectively using arms supplied by the U.S. and allied nations to counter Russian advances, in some cases pushing into Russia's front lines, according to reports on Thursday. Milley, who stood next to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, followed a meeting with leaders from the Ukraine Defense Contact Group and said that the U.S. and allied nations renewed their pledge to support Ukraine in its fight to, quote, live free of Russian occupation and of Russian violence. Austin said Ukraine will continue to need assistance in air and coastal defenses, along with other critical capabilities. The United States has stepped up to meet those needs, he said, referring to another $675 million in arms packages approved for Ukraine on Thursday. The package will include howitzers, artillery munitions, Humvees, armored ambulances, and anti-tank systems. So far, the Russian strategic objectives have been defeated, Milley says. The chairman detailed how Russia launched a second offensive in April after it failed to take Kyiv, overthrow the Ukrainian government, or push westward across the country. Milley also claimed that Russia has failed in its second objective as it has yet to take the Donbass or establish dominance over the Dnieper River, only crossing it in the southern Kherson region, where Ukrainian forces have destroyed at least 2 bridges that the Russians relied on for supplies, and resupplies, that is. Their operational gains, in addition to their strategic gains, have been defeated by a very successful defense conducted by Ukraine, Milley says. The general reiterated the U.S.'s long-term commitment to Ukraine, but warned that the war is not over. Russia's a big country. They have very serious ambitions with respect to Ukraine, he added. So sustainment of Ukraine to continue their fight for their survival will be absolutely necessary. He still has nutsacks for eyelids. And then we've made it to Friday. Today. 9/9. Some of you may have noticed in my PBN breaking news today about Prince Charles, you might have saw the numbers 9922 at the bottom. It was just the date. 9/9/22. It's not a code. But I got to use some really neat fonts for it, so I put it in there. Figured I would date them for quick reference. Anyway, moving on. Looks like I have 4 stories for you left. We'll get through them pretty quickly, I suspect. This one started early, like 7 a.m. for me. And this is actually a continuation of a story we covered, I think, last week. Pope Francis repeated his previous warnings of a world conflict Thursday while speaking at an audience with pontifical representatives. The pontiff reiterated a claim he first presented a week ago during a general audience, that the earth is already enraptured in a piecemeal World War III. Wow, dude. I mean, we here at the War Room have been saying that since day fucking 1. But hey, good on you for recognizing it a week ago. The tempest of the COVID-19 pandemic has imposed various limitations on our daily lives and our pastoral activities. The Pope says, now it seems that the worst is over, and thanks be to God we can meet again. But unfortunately, Europe and the entire world are convulsed by a war of particular gravity in terms of the violation of international law, the risks of nuclear escalation, and the grave economic and social consequences, Pope Francis continued. It is a piecemeal Third World War, to which you bear witness in the places where you carry out your mission. The Pope made a similar comment during his August 31st general audience, where he acknowledged the anniversary of World War II's dramatic beginnings. Tomorrow you will remember the anniversary of the outbreak of World War II, which so painfully marked the Polish nation, the Pope said before referencing the current era as a Third World War, and saying that overarching conflict will most likely play out piecemeal, unlike previous global wars, according to the Vatican media. Pope Francis has referenced his piecemeal World War III observations since the beginning of the unprovoked Russian invasion into Ukraine. Oh, so maybe he did catch on. Okay, my mistake. A few years ago, it occurred to me to say that we are experiencing a Third World War being fought piecemeal. He told this to the editors of the outlet La Civiltà Cattolica. Let me say that again. La Civiltà Cattolica. So it's the Civil Catholic? Does that sound about right? Back in June. Today, for me, World War III has already been declared. The Pope referred to the possibility that the war was, quote, either provoked or not prevented, and that there was interest in testing and selling weapons. The Pope previously laid the blame for the war on weapons manufacturers and arms dealers, whom he claimed were happy to see their products tested in conflict. What is before our eyes is a situation of world war, global interest, arms sales, and geopolitical appropriation, which is martyring a heroic people, the Pope told the outlet. Okay, so maybe he's not wrong. I think his timing was a little slow, but whatever. Moving on. For some reason, I called this Don't Pay UK. I think it was because of a protest. Anyway, in Italy last Saturday, people burned their electricity and gas bills. On the same day, in the Czech Republic capital of Prague, 70,000 people protested the government's approach to skyrocketing consumer prices. And on Tuesday, in Britain, incoming Prime Minister Liz Truss vowed to immediately tackle the energy crisis and address the soaring cost of living. Let me tell you why that's kind of important, that timeline. Tuesday morning, Liz Truss went to Balmoral Castle, and she met Queen Elizabeth II, who at the time appeared to be in good health. That has been brought up several times in the last couple of days. She met with the Queen like 14 prime ministers before her, and the Queen, in tradition, invited her to form a new government, which is Parliament, right? And then they would discuss their visions of going forward. Prime ministers always go and seek the blessing of the monarch, essentially, because she's been there the entire time. Object permanence. Shocker. Probably been around the entirety of Liz Truss's life. I don't know her biography yet. I will learn that before next week, though. She went to visit her at Balmoral that morning. She went back to number 10 Downing Street, and she made this vow to attack the energy crisis and address the cost of living. 2 days later, Elizabeth was dead. What a strange coincidence. For decades, Europe has relied overwhelmingly on Russia for fossil fuels to run its factories, generate its electricity, and heat its homes. Now, in countries across the continent, citizens and government alike are feeling the bitter impact of Moscow's 6-month-old war in Ukraine, which has already caused a shortfall in the national gas supply, pushing up prices of everyday goods and leaving people struggling to keep their homes warm and families fed. A combination of Western-imposed sanctions on Russia due to its ongoing aggressions in Ukraine and Russia's angry pushback, combined with 2 years of pandemic shutdowns, extreme weather conditions, and a range of other factors, are now sparking fears of even worse shortages of gas, electricity, and basic food staples as Europe heads into the cold winter months. There's a very real sense of crisis because the European energy supply, which has largely been provided by Russia, is now restricted. This came from Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. There's a general fear in Europe that we might run dry of gas over the course of the winter that is leading to stockpiling. Firstly, to make sure that the countries have as much gas in their storages as possible. And secondly, many countries are now looking at how they can restrict the use of energy in order to make it last through winter, he says. In addition, Europe is also eyeing alternative sources of energy from Norway to North Africa to the Mediterranean basin to ensure it will fill the shortage this year and end its reliance on Russia once and for all. What we're seeing now is the result of what happens when you rely on a rogue state for energy. This came from David Patrikarakos. Patrikarakos. Contributing editor at Unheard, and author of War in 140 Characters. I believe that was the character limit of Twitter before they doubled it. Just like COVID taught us that we cannot rely on a rogue state, China, for our supply chains, so this is telling us that we cannot rely on a rogue state like Russia for our energy needs, he says. This was inevitable because a state like Russia is always going to behave like this in the end, and therefore, any vulnerabilities we have, any reliance on them, will be exploited and used for blackmail purposes, which is exactly what's happening right now. I want to take a little sidebar here. He's saying that you cannot rely on a rogue state for energy. I disagree. I think what this is sheer and utter European national laziness. I said it. Laziness. You had the means to generate your own electricity. You outsourced it because it was cheaper from your enemies. And now that they shut the taps off, you don't have a backup plan. That was your fuck up. This country, the United States, was once energy independent under the previous administration. That has been undermined by the current administration that has brought us back to dependence on our enemies abroad. You didn't learn from our mistakes, and now you're suffering from them. That's the difference. You can say that you can't trust on a rogue state, but you allowed yourself to outsource to one. So who's really at fault here? Food for thought. You brought this upon yourself. Now you're struggling to try to find solutions at the 11th hour with winter fastly approaching. You're going to have to swallow some of this shit sandwich because you made it. Russia's response to the European withdrawal from its energy sources has been to reduce its gas supplies in the hopes of bringing an end to sanctions. On Sunday, the state-run energy giant Gazprom halted supplies of natural gas through a key pipeline to Germany, citing a gas leak. Dmitry Peskov, a spokesman for Russian President Vladimir Putin, made clear that the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, which pumps gas from St. Petersburg to Germany via the Baltic Sea, will only begin working again when sanctions against Moscow are removed. However, European governments appear determined not to return to Russian sources, despite soaring inflation and rising consumer prices that have sparked protests in France and Germany, as well as in Italy and the Czech Republic. Seeking to ease the civic unrest, governments have started to roll out a series of measures. In Portugal on Tuesday, the government announced a $2.4 billion package for struggling households in Germany. $64.3 billion was slated this week for the same purpose. This coming Friday, European Union energy ministers will meet in Brussels to discuss a bloc-wide package of solutions, with European Commissioner for Energy, Kadri Simpson, telling the AP that a temporary capping of the price of gas used to produce electricity, modification of trading rules on energy exchanges, and coordinated demand reduction measures could be among the new measures. Word salad! I think everyone recognizes there's a crisis going on. It's not as if this came out of nowhere. We've been seeing it building up, says Mendoza. I think there's going to be a careful balancing act needed now between governments and citizens, with the government showing that they're doing as much as possible, and citizens accepting that they can't do everything. Whether it will be enough depends in large part on the forthcoming winter, he says. If it's a cold one, the situation will get a lot worse, he says, adding, I think everyone in Europe knows what we're facing, and all will have to look at their own energy consumption and work out how they're going to restrict their own energy use to keep their own bills down. So let me get this straight. Did he just pull a Gavin Newsom? The people are going to have to look at their own use to keep their bills down? Their use hasn't increased. Their supply has decreased, which made their price increase. Not their use. Their use has maintained the same average. Everything around it. You're throwing the responsibility of all of societal fuck-ups on the people.
No. Not societal. Government.
Governmental fuck-ups. Thank you. Thank you. You nailed that. They're blaming...
Because what has California done? They shut down nuclear power plants?
Fuck all nothing is what they've done.
No, they've decreased the energy that they potentially could produce.
They did that here in Texas, too. I hate to
Yeah, how'd that work out for you?
7 people died freezing to death 2 winters ago.
You had, what, rolling blackouts?
No.
Basically, you turned into California.
Yeah, in the dead of winter during a bomb cyclone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had fun. I got to drive around throwing rooster tails in my T-Bird on frozen streets with 3-inch thick ice, which I had never seen in this part of Texas. That was a whole new experience. Although I did find it really funny, throwing rooster tails.
You want a whole new experience, move up to New Hampshire.
Well, I mean, I spent time... You know where I spend time. I mean, it's that. But still, where I am, it's very rare. And it's very weird. And for me to be able to do donuts and rooster tails while assholes in four-wheel drives are getting stuck in ditches asking me to help them, I'm like, fuck you. This is a car, dude. Kiss my ass. Anyway, moving on. 2 stories left, promise. Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia power plant, we're back to that, sorry, has once again lost access to the electrical grid. That's the 3rd time? After shelling destroyed the neighboring city's power infrastructure. The ZNPP has lost access to the electrical grid at least twice since Russia's invasion in February. But IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi warned that this time the plant's operators will not be able to securely reconnect the reactors to the power source. And Nerhodar has gone dark, Grossi said, in a very stark warning. The power infrastructure feeding the city, home to the NPP's operators and their families, has now been destroyed in the shelling. The Director General, who left the ZNPP, followed a fact-finding mission earlier this week, said shelling at the city's thermal power plant destroyed the switchyard, which has caused a complete blackout, leaving the city without water, power, and sewage. Given the increased and continued shelling, there is little likelihood of reestablishing reliable off-site power to the ZNPP, especially as the shelling continually and repeatedly damages the infrastructure. If workers evacuate, the plant will be short-staffed, he warned. Grossi this week urged immediate steps be taken to secure the plant, and international officials have called for the complete demilitarization of the plant, which Russia has occupied since March 3rd. Oh, wow. Sorry, I just got a thing. Let's see. Though it continues to be operated by Ukrainian technicians. Ukrainian President Zelensky called on the UN to send in peacekeeping troops to help secure the area, as officials repeatedly warned the fallout from the attack could be more devastating than the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. It is unclear what the UN's response to the increased threat at the plant will be, and nobody could immediately reach the UN for comment. Secretary General and shocker. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on Russia to remove its troops and military equipment from the nuclear power plant, and for Ukraine to promise not to move its troops in after. Operators at the ZNPP are considering shutting down the only reactor still running at the power station, as it cannot guarantee a reliable source of energy. The entire plant would then be fully reliant on emergency diesel generators for ensuring vital nuclear safety and security functions. Didn't that happen in the first season of The Walking Dead? They found that one place that was running on generators, and as soon as the fuel ran out, it blew up and collapsed on itself. Yeah.
I didn't watch The Walking Dead, so...
That was the end of the first season. Anyway, let's see. But it is not just the unreliable power source that the nuclear energy officials are concerned about. Plant workers may try to evacuate the area with their families as the situation has become increasingly dire. This is an unsustainable situation and it is becoming increasingly precarious, Grossi warned. This is completely unacceptable. It cannot stand. Well, what are you going to do about it? Grossi called for all shelling to immediately stop and for nuclear safety and security protection zone to be established. Both Russia and Ukraine have accused each other of shelling the nuclear power plant. So, a guy who is powerless to stop military actions is demanding a stop to military actions. That's going to go real well. And, and in the quote, if it wasn't obvious segment of tonight's show, this is the last story of the day, by the way. That's why I call it the if it wasn't obvious segment. Here you go. Russian President Vladimir Putin will not be among the heads of state to attend Queen Elizabeth II's upcoming funeral, his spokesperson announced on Friday. Dmitry Peskov, speaking to Russian state news agency RIA Novosti, said Putin is not being considered for Moscow's representation at the event, noting that the Kremlin is waiting to learn about the protocol of the ceremony before deciding who will attend. The United Kingdom has firmly opposed Putin's bloody invasion of Ukraine, which has lasted nearly 200 days. Putin and Western leaders have avoided meeting each other since the onset of the conflict. On Thursday, following Elizabeth's death, Putin wrote a letter to King Charles III. Please accept our deepest condolences on the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, he says. The most important events in recent history of the United Kingdom are inextricably linked with the name of Her Majesty. For many decades, Elizabeth II rightfully enjoyed the love and respect of her subjects, as well as authority on the world stage, he continues. I wish you courage and perseverance in the face of this heavy, irreparable loss. I ask you to convey the words of sincere sympathy and support to the members of the royal family and all the people of Great Britain. That really sounds nice from him.
You think he actually wrote that?
Well, maybe. But here's the thing. If King George VI, her father, had died like FDR, or better yet, the perfect example, FDR died at the beginning of his 4th term as President of the United States during World War II. This story, we're not sure if we're attending the funeral. That would be like Adolf Hitler saying, yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be at the funeral of FDR.
Well, he certainly cannot attend it himself because he would be arrested immediately.
I think he should go. See, I think that's exactly what he meant about we need to learn the protocol. I think that means, do I have diplomatic immunity?
No, he'd be arrested for war crimes immediately as soon as he stepped on British ground.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Do I get diplomatic immunity to attend the funeral of your monarch? Because if I don't, and I get arrested as a war criminal, then I can't go. CYA.
No, he'll send Lapdog.
Sergei Lapdog?
Yep.
Gross. I don't think they'll send him either, because he would be arrested. Anybody attached to Putin would be arrested.
Diplomatic immunity.
No, I think anybody attached to Putin would be arrested. Honestly, like instantly, because anybody
they don't care about they want the head of the snake.
No, anybody they take as a political prisoner becomes a bargaining chip for prisoner exchanges.
Yeah, they don't hold any British prisoners, so.
No, but in the name of NATO or the UN, you see what I'm saying? Or we're going to turn them over to the UN.
No, they wouldn't do that. It wouldn't hold up in court.
Whose court?
The UN. The Hague.
You mean, okay, so you would agree that ever since the, what do they call them?
Now, Putin being the head of state and the one who started the war, absolutely would be able to be arrested and fucking brought to the Hague.
No, listen. Would you agree that every aggressor in modern time that has fought on the battlefield has ignored the rules of, what's that fucking thing called? The Geneva Convention.
No.
Every enemy we have ever fought never abided by the rules of the Geneva Convention. Would you agree with that?
Every enemy we fought, yes.
Right.
Did we? Yes.
So
even to our own detriment.
So everything that would violate the international court would be irrelevant. Like,
well, let's see.
We arrested
Putin has authorized the use of thermobaric bombs.
Right. What I'm saying, though, is...
that is a war crime.
What I'm saying is if you arrest Sergei Lapdog and you hold him as a bargaining chip, you were like, that won't hold up in court, nobody's going to abide... nobody's going to defend him. Nobody would touch that case.
Yeah, they would. Just like... oh, yeah, you'd find some scumbag lawyer that would.
No,
Absolutely would.
no, because you know why?
If not, the Russians would provide him one.
They would hand him over to us, and we'd put him in Gitmo.
No.
Yeah.
That's not how shit works.
The way shit works has been rewritten ever since 9/11. Nothing works.
There's certain things you do and certain things you don't do, and that is one of them. Now, if they could grab Putin, absolutely would grab Putin.
No, being nice is over. Diplomacy has failed. There's no reasoning with a man who won't even come to the table to talk. So you have to start taking everything out around him. It's just like, okay.
So then he declares he's at war with you because you kidnapped his guy.
He's at war with the entire
against
world
international
right now.
against international norms.
Yes. He's at war with the entire world right now.
As much as you hate it, Sergei Lapdog would be afforded diplomatic immunity.
Disagree. Nobody likes him. Nobody likes
him, but he's still the fucking top diplomat. You don't have to like him.
No, I think, in all honesty, I think there are no rules to this. He has already declared war on the world.
Because if we grab Lapdog, what do you think they would do to any U.S. citizen that they have in their prison?
They've already got Brittany Griner.
Yes. What do you think they'd do? They'd probably execute her.
She's not coming out.
Just Russians being Russians.
She's never coming out. She got a 9-year sentence.
You watch. They will trade some fucking spy for the bit.
They want one of the biggest Russian arms dealers in the world.
Yeah, I know exactly who he is.
Yeah, we're not giving that up.
And no, they'll trade it for some spy that we've caught. Well, that we got sitting in prison.
They would have named that already. They want the arms guy, which means that's probably the only piece we have that's worth a shit to them.
Nah, we got other pieces.
Until we capture Lapdog. Then all of a sudden...
No, we got other pieces.
If they did, then they would have named it. Because it would have been advantageous for them to have him back.
What makes you think they didn't?
Because it would have made it... It would have been public by now.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah, it would.
Not if it involved U.S. national security.
No. Not from us. We wouldn't say it. They would. They don't...
No, they wouldn't, because then they don't
gain anything by hiding who they're trading for. They don't. Everybody knows they have Brittany Griner. They've got one other guy, too, actually. Because when everyone was fighting to get Brittany's thing overturned, there was another guy that's been there longer. He's been a political prisoner even longer. I mean, okay, how about this? We grab, or the world collectively grabs the lapdog, and they trade him for Alexei Navalny. Huh?
Never happened.
That's thinking outside the box, though. You see what I'm saying? It's like, look.
Yeah, that would never happen.
It's like, we're going to do you a solid,
Putin will never let that dude out of fucking prison.
No, but it's like, we're going to do you a solid, bro. We're going to give you back your lapdog, and we're going to take away your opposition that you don't want around
because
anyway.
when he was outside of Russia, they tried killing him multiple times.
Exactly. So they'll bring him
So they're
here.
not going to let that guy out from being under their fucking thumb.
They'll bring him here. Like, they couldn't kill him here.
Why? So they can murder him?
They couldn't do it here.
Yeah, they would.
No, that guy would probably be in the same lockdown, club-fed looking place that Osama bin Laden's in right now. Watching Oprah.
Why? He didn't do anything wrong here.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying he'd have the cush gig. He'd be hidden away, eating bonbons and watching Oprah right now, just like Osama bin Laden.
So then he couldn't reach out to his supporters?
No, he can do it on social media. It's just he's not going to tell people, oh, yeah,
He's got the balls to freaking call out Putin on... He's not going to hide.
Well, yeah. Do you know why he's
That's
got the
not
balls
who he is.
He's got the balls to do it because he has...
Because he don't care if he dies.
No, he has an international court defense attorney who comes to that prison once a week. He's allowed visitations. He's allowed to be handed a phone to post on social media in the presence of his lawyer.
No, you're not getting it.
If the lawyer wasn't given his visitations,
he had the balls
to
call out Putin when he was living abroad
Yes.
when they tried poisoning him.
Yeah. They tried to poison him.
And
They
he
tried to
still does
irradiate
it.
him. You're missing the
That dude is
key.
not gonna hide from Putin. No matter where he's at, he's not gonna hide.
He would become Charles de Gaulle,
He,
right?
yes, he would also be willing to be a martyr if it meant getting Putin out of office.
He would never be a martyr to get Putin out of office because he's supposed to be the next leader of Russia. That's the problem. He would be the person who leads Russia out of this. That's why he's in prison right now. That's why he's such a threat to Putin, because he was the closest thing to overthrowing him, influentially speaking. There isn't another Alexei Navalny in that country yet. He hasn't had enough public exposure.
No, but his death would create one.
I don't think so, because he hasn't motivated the masses yet. You see what I'm saying?
He's got significant support within the Russia.
Then how come Moscow hasn't been overthrown? How come there hasn't been a revolution yet? There hasn't been enough people to do it.
Crushed them.
Right, there hasn't been enough people to do it.
They locked up tens of thousands of people in
the
the
Gulag. They did
Gulag.
the same thing when this war started. They locked up like 15,000 people.
Who do you think Navalny's supporters were? More than likely, those same people.
A lot of them, but I mean that's 15,000 in a country of about 800 million. That's a drop in the bucket.
No, they don't have that many people. Are you kidding me?
Total population.
You're
of
lucky
Russia.
if Russians have like 100 million, if that.
Wow, you're right. 144 million.
Yeah, no way they
more
have
than
that
they
kind of
do.
population. Way more.
Twice as much.
They have twice as much landmass.
Yeah, I know.
But we have
twice as many people. Well, 3 times as many if you count all the illegals. Oh! Sorry. Had to go there. All right. Well, he's not going to attend the funeral. He's not invited, first of all. And even if he was, they'd probably grab him. And if they don't send him, then there's no point in anyone going that's representing Russia, because nobody likes anybody from Russia right now. The only person they could send...
might send the British ambassador.
Nah, fuck
the Russian ambassador.
Fuck that. The only person that they could send that the public would be like, oh, you're cool, bro, would be the guy from Ivan the Bear Tactical.
Ivan?
Huh?
Ivan?
Yeah. He'd be the only person. Like, okay, look, we're going to send this guy. Because nobody else, there's nobody likable left. They can't send Mikhail Gorbachev because he died.
Ironically, a couple weeks ahead of her.
Ironically, that's the second funeral that Putin refuses to attend.
Yeah, because Gorby did not like Putin.
Putin thinks Gorby is a traitor.
Gorby thought he was a hardline freaking traitor.
Yes. Well, they both did. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, do you have any extra stories you want to add?
Nope.
Nothing you can think of. Let me take a quick look, because my feed does update. And there are no new updates. That is good, because I have spent 2 hours and 10 minutes of these fine people's times. Many of who've been here the entire duration. Many of you who probably hit the like button already. So I'm going to play this. And I'm going to thank you all for watching. I'm going to thank Scott for being here. I'm going to curse Mikhail Knightstreitsky for being lazy and not showing up. Actually, he had a pressing engagement. As did the Warsaw Patriot, who's actually quite sick. He found out today. So here's to a speedy recovery for you. Anyway, if you're new to my channel, welcome, but if you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, maybe check out my other playlists and see if my other interests might be of interest to you. For instance, my breaking news updates, like today. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. This was the War Room. This was day 198. We will be back next week for yet another week of the War Room, and anything else I could probably put out. So thanks for watching. Slava Ukraini. and good night.